Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's arrest by the FBI has ignited a scandal that exposes deep corruption and financial mismanagement. Once seen as a leader of promise, Henyard allegedly drained the town's financial reserves through wire fraud, funding a lavish lifestyle of luxury vacations, designer shopping sprees, and a taxpayer-funded private security team, all while Dolton plunged into millions of dollars in debt. Her tenure, which began with bold promises, quickly unraveled as public funds meant for community development were seemingly funneled into personal indulgences. Any attempts to question her reckless spending were met with resistance. The breaking point came when the FBI launched an investigation, uncovering allegations of embezzlement and misuse of public funds. Further inquiries have linked Henyard's personal businesses, including a restaurant, property management company, and passee, to potential financial misconduct. Federal agents are now combing through payroll documents, budget reports, and credit card statements, seeking the full extent of her actions. Close associates, including Keith Freeman, are also under scrutiny. The fallout has been catastrophic. Dolton, once financially stable, is now drowning in debt, its residents betrayed by the very leader they trusted. In a bizarre twist, Henyard was locked out of her office, with sensitive documents left exposed, raising even more questions about what she may have been hiding. As legal proceedings unfold, one question remains: will Henyard face the full weight of justice, or will she escape accountability? One thing is clear: the damage she inflicted on Dolton will be felt for years to come. As if she were a head of state, Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard spared no expense on personal security, using public funds to finance an extravagant lifestyle, all while the town's finances crumbled. Lavish vacations, high-end fashion, and luxury perks were regularly charged to the town's account, deepening Dolton's financial crisis. The FBI's ongoing investigation has uncovered what appears to be a calculated exploitation of taxpayer money, turning Dolton's once thriving economy into a fiscal disaster. The fallout has been devastating. With over $3.5 million in debt, Dolton and neighboring Thornton Township are in turmoil. Tensions between Henyard and township trustees have reached a boiling point, with officials refusing to approve further payments until the financial chaos is addressed. Henyard's defiance, including abruptly leaving meetings and blocking financial reviews, has only fueled suspicions. As federal agents dig deeper, payroll records, credit card statements, and business dealings are under scrutiny, revealing that Henyard's financial mismanagement may have extended to those within her inner circle. The FBI's findings suggest more than negligence, pointing to a deliberate pattern of corruption. For the people of Dolton, this scandal is nothing short of a betrayal. Henyard, once seen as a promising leader, has become the face of greed and mismanagement, leaving residents to pick up the pieces of a town on the brink of collapse. With mounting evidence, legal consequences seem inevitable. Whether she faces criminal charges remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: her political career is over, and Dolton's long road to recovery has just begun. As the FBI digs deeper into Tiffany Henyard's past, anticipation is building over what shocking revelations will come next. While Henyard indulged in luxury vacations and extravagant shopping sprees, the town of Dolton, her responsibility, drowned in debt. But the financial crisis didn't seem to faze her. Instead, she continued her reckless spending, including an outrageous $333,000 Amazon shopping spree in a single day. It was as if she lived in an entirely different world, one where Dolton's crumbling infrastructure and struggling residents were mere afterthoughts. Her purchases were nothing short of jaw-dropping: gold-plated staplers, designer face masks, and who knows what else, all funded by taxpayers' hard-earned money. While potholes remained unfilled and critical town services suffered, Henyard lived like a Hollywood celebrity. Instead of leading her community, she used her position as a golden ticket to a life of excess, splurging millions of dollars on first class, travel, fine dining, and lavish accommodations. The situation spiraled so far out of control that federal authorities had no choice but to step in. The FBI meticulously combed through her receipts, payroll records, and credit card statements, uncovering a pattern of financial abuse that only grew more catastrophic with each discovery. But Henyard's troubles didn't end there. In a stunning twist, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was enlisted by the Dolton Village Board to help oversee the investigation. Known for her tough, no-nonsense approach and background as a federal prosecutor, Lightfoot's involvement sent a clear message. This was no minor scandal. People believed in her. They wanted to believe in her. Her campaign was slick, well-funded, and full of promises that resonated with the working-class citizens of Dolton. When she won the election, it felt like a new beginning. But beneath the Uzi polished speeches and the grand visions, Henyard was already laying the groundwork for her own financial gain. As months turned into years, Henyard's financial decisions became more and more questionable. Public funds, which were meant for road repairs, schools, and emergency services, were mysteriously disappearing. City projects remained stagnant, yet her personal wealth seemed to skyrocket. What started as small discrepancies in city budgets soon turned into glaring red flags. Auditors began noticing large, unexplained transactions. Money allocated for city improvements was instead being funneled into businesses linked to Henyard. Reports surfaced of taxpayer funds being used to pay for luxury vacations, high-end shopping sprees, and private security services. Still, Henyard denied any wrongdoing. She brushed off concerns, dismissing them as baseless accusations from political rivals. Whenever questions arose, she doubled down on her narrative. She was a strong woman in power, and people were trying to tear her down. The moment of reckoning came when the FBI launched a full-scale investigation. At first, the people of Dolton were skeptical. Many still saw Henyard as their leader, their voice, but as more details emerged, their faith began to crumble. The FBI's findings painted a damning picture. Henyard had used city funds to pay for an extravagant lifestyle that included a collection of designer handbags worth tens of thousands of dollars, lavish vacations to exotic destinations, fully funded by taxpayers' personal security teams, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, luxury vehicles registered under the city's name but exclusively used by Henyard. Meanwhile, Dolton itself was collapsing under a $3.5 million debt. Public services were underfunded. Schools were struggling to pay teachers. Roads remained in disrepair. Small businesses were closing due to lack of city support. The very people she had vowed to uplift were now suffering the consequences of her unchecked greed. As the evidence mounted, the community's anger became impossible to ignore. Dolton, once a quiet town, erupted into protests. The very people who had once campaigned for Henyard, who had believed in her vision, now stood outside City Hall with signs demanding her resignation. Residents who had defended her just weeks before now felt betrayed. They had given her their trust, their votes, and their hope for a better future. Instead, they had been played. Local business owners spoke out, furious over the mismanagement of funds that could have been used to boost the economy. Parents demanded answers, questioning why their children's schools were struggling while Henyard dined at five-star restaurants on the city's dime. Henyard, however, refused to take responsibility. She continued to insist that she was being targeted unfairly, blaming political adversaries for orchestrating a smear campaign. But the truth had become too obvious to ignore. The FBI's investigation was still ongoing, but even before its conclusion, the weight of public opinion had already sentenced her. What started as a local controversy soon captured national attention. News outlets picked up the story, painting Henyard as the face of political corruption. Analysts dissected the scandal, drawing comparisons to infamous political figures who had abused their power. Late-night hosts made Henyard the subject of their monologues, mocking her lavish spending habits. Social media exploded with outrage, with hashtags like "Ice Justice for Dolton" and "Henyard Resign" trending nationwide. The scandal had transcended Dolton. It had become a cautionary tale of what happens when power goes unchecked. The city council held emergency meetings, discussing the legal pathways for her removal. Impeachment was on the table. Some demanded immediate resignation. Others called for criminal charges. But the people of Dolton had already made up their minds. They no longer saw Henyard as their leader. They saw her for what she was: a fraud, a thief, a symbol of corruption. Henyard's once loyal supporters now stood against her. As the calls for justice grew louder, her excuses became weaker. The era of indulgence, of unchecked greed, was over. For Tiffany Henyard, there was no escape. The people she had betrayed were demanding accountability. The investigation was closing in, and soon justice would be served.